No, my name is Connor. I have been a personal trainer for 8 years. I have a degree in exercise physiology. I specialize in movement and mechanics. So if you have joint pain, I can fix it. I'm the guy. I also am a nutrition coach, and I've done strengthening and conditioning, and I've trained athletes, yada yada. But today is the first episode in 70 where I will go over every single principle that I think is valuable for you to know if you want to train or coach anyone, or if you're just your regular gym goer who likes to binge YouTube videos. So the first thing we're going to go over today is progressive overload. Progressive overload is one of the most commonly heard of principles in personal training. That is also commonly the most misapplied principle in personal training. Not because it's complicated, because it's typically taught backwards. Most people think progressive overload simply means adding weight. In some cases it does, but what it really means is increasing effective load at a level and pace that the body can actually adapt to, but also forces adaptation. Remember, this is a biological survival mechanism. If you're going to mild discomfort, you're not going to change. You need to be uncomfortable. That is a very, very good signal that you're actually making change. Your body is very conservative with energy expenditure. So unless it has a real reason to recognize this as something that it needs for survival, it will downregulate most systems, so growth, speed, neurological drive, stuff like that, so that it doesn't waste energy. That distinction matters because you can increase load without increasing adaptation, and you can also increase adaptation without increasing actual load. The body doesn't actually adapt to exercises, it adapts to stress signals. Mechanical tension, metabolic stress, mechanical tension being, tension, metabolic stress being the pump, that burn is metabolic stress. Neurological demand, so how heavy that weight is, how much you're physically concentrating to move that weight or to propel yourself forward. When those signals exceed what the body is already adapted to, and it has proper recovery time, that is when adaptation occurs. When those signals don't exceed that, nothing changes. That's why so many people you see in the gym are spinning their wheels. They come in, they do their workouts, and they leave over and over, and they never make those changes. Sometimes you see those people who come in, they work out really hard, and then they leave and come back, and they're consistent, and they make no change. That means their recovery, i.e. their sleep or how much protein they eat, isn't sufficient enough. Or you have someone else who hits their macros perfectly, but they come in and they don't push hard enough to exceed what they're already adapted to. And if they don't do that, they don't make growth. Those two principles take to your grave, because if anyone ever tells you they're not growing or adapting, they're either not working out hard enough or they're not getting sufficient recovery. This is the meat and beans of personal training. That's also why if someone comes to me, I can get them to grow 3 to 5 times faster than in other situations, because I know the mechanisms behind how it works. Hard work is great, but it means nothing if your body doesn't have the tools it needs to progress. Why constant training? Next, stops working. Early progress comes from novelty, okay? Your nervous system learns the movement, then your muscles learn to produce that force more efficiently. This is very quick, but once that efficiency becomes natural, that movement becomes cheaper biologically. So you adapt, and then your body is used to that. So it has a lower demand on your systems. That means the stress signal drops. And what did we learn earlier? That the stress signal is what increases demand, and demand is what changes your body. So sometimes the workout can feel hard, but the stress signal is weak. This is when everyone starts to complain about plateaus. Progressive overload is the planned manipulation of stress signals over time. Load is one tool, so is volume. So is proximity to failure, so how close you get to failure. So is range of motion, how deep you get in a squat, how far you can bend over in an RDL. Frequency and tempo are also other tools of progressive overload. So how fast you do reps, and how often you work out muscle groups throughout the week. So the mistake is treating those as random knobs than controlled variables. A good program doesn't ask, can we add more weight? It asks, what is the minimum increase in demand we can make that will still drive adaptation? So here's a coaching example that I would do correctly. Let's say I have a lifter who squats 185 for 3 sets of 5. That workload currently adds adaptation. Then doing that over and over will eventually lead to a stall in adaptation. But the solution isn't always adding more weight. You could add a rep per set. You could decrease rest time. You could increase depth. You could increase weekly exposure to that set of exercises. You could increase effort by controlling tempo better. Each one of those increase stress without increasing load. This is really important when you're training power lifters and people who are going for weight, because they will hit plateaus where they can't lift heavier. You need to find ways around plateaus. That's why progressive overload is so important. Most lifters overload what they can't see, so weight on the bar, and don't overload what they can't see, which is tempo, volume, more reps, more sets. And it must be noted that connective tissue adapts much slower than muscle, so your tendons and your joints versus your biceps and your quads. Those take longer. Also, neural fatigue accumulates invisibly. Recovery capacity, so how fast you can recover, also fluctuates week to week. I know you probably think that's mainly women, but it also occurs in men. Some people either push too hard and stall, and some people don't push hard enough and never make progress. And then they say progress is genetic. I have trained so many people who thought they were hard gainers or just naturally fluffy. It was never that. It was poor programs and poor coaching. Okay, so here's the rule. If performance is improving, any one of those variables, more weight, more frequency, more load, more volume, faster movement, you are progressing. So if you make better performance, you are progressing. That is a fact. If someone's like, I'm not gaining any muscle. If they're putting on weight, like on the bar, they're gaining muscle. It's a fact. It's not an option. If performance is stagnant, the overload is insufficient. And then if your performance is receding, so they're still going in, they're still really pushing it, but their weight's dropping, their speed's dropping, they are not sufficiently recovered. You will adapt if you get your recovery in. That's it. Everything else is just variable selection based on the situation. So if I have a power lifter, I'm not going to add reps, but you know what I will do? I'll add tempo. If I have a bodybuilder, you know what I'm not going to do when they stall? Is add weight, but I will add sets. Does that make sense? You see how you can get around these recovery variables? That is why this is a coaching trick and not some YouTube hack. YouTube often teaches exercise and tries to get you some course or whatever to buy something. What coaching does is it manages stress. Progressive overload isn't a tactic, it's a system level decision that targets fatigue and your long-term trajectory. That's why copying workouts and doing programs, it works for a couple weeks, but it doesn't work for years. And if you're real, you're not going to get there in 90 days. You're going to get where you want to be in 3 years. This series is not about workouts. It's about the principles that govern recovery and adaptation. The next video we're going to talk about is about specificity. So getting specific with who you're training and why training in the wrong direction still produces the wrong results.